And how did you find that support, Richie? Because I know there's a lot of people out there, and they could be in Monaghan, they could be in Laois, they could be in Mayo, that
Sure.
literally feel completely isolated, maybe that there's not as much support, and hopefully the likes of the local enterprise boards will help in some case there. But there's a lot. I suppose the more you delve, the more you realise that there is loads of the startup
Yeah.
Irelands and launch pads and all little pockets of places that can help a startup. How did you find places to even go to?
Yeah. Well, I guess like the thing that we did well was reaching out to the right people first of all. I think for early stage guys to reach out to people who have already done it, um, whether that's successful or unsuccessful, but have been through the process and who know the ecosystem. The Dublin community is very small, and it's very easy to find out, who's in there and who kind of knows what's going on. So for anyone starting out, to actually talk to that person and to understand all of their options. And there's so many options, like you said. There's the NDRC Launchpad program. There's Wyra, Enterprise Ireland do an amazing job for early stage startups. So do the local enterprise boards. I think it's not just going out by yourself, because you don't have to be alone in this, right? You should reach out to people who have been there and been successful, and ask them. And like for us, even us right now, we can email people, and we do it all the time. We reach out to people all over the world to ask for help, and you'd be amazed at the response rate and the willingness of people to actually help out, because they know that they've probably been there at one stage and they would have liked that help. So I would say definitely don't be afraid to reach out to that person to get a feel for what support is there, and what could be the next step for
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant piece of advice. I mean, the reality, as I usually say to people, is what would you say if someone approached you for some help? And most of us would be delighted to help someone that comes to us. But sometimes there's something in our head saying, I don't want to bother that person, they're too important. And I suppose you were probably brass enough and ballsy enough to say, well, sod it, no, I'd love to speak to that person. And you went after that,
yeah.
where some people don't do it. Yeah. So very good. Another thing for you, and I think it's we talk about reaching out to people that have experience, which is brilliant. But let's be honest, you're straight out of college. You don't have any experience, and you're setting up an amazing company. I'd like to think I have loads of experience. I'm nowhere near where you are at the moment on the scale. No one's offering me €500,000 in funding. Do you think, as regards a good time to start up a business? You say there's no time like now. Do you think that more young people should take that plunge before possibly they have mortgages and kids and wives and all sorts of things that make actually starting up a business a far more daunting task?
Yeah, well, obviously, it's easy for me to say, because I don't have those commitments, and definitely when those commitments aren't there, it makes it a lot easier. But like from all of the startups that we've seen in NDRC and Wyra, you know, 75% of the startups that come into those programs are in those positions where they're paying mortgages and they have family. Um, but if they might not have been able to set up a company 10 years ago, but because they get that initial funding to leave their job and pursue this full time, I don't think it matters as much now as it did 10 years ago. So I still think, for anybody of any age, the opportunity and the support is there.
Yeah, cool. You talked about, I suppose, reaching out to people, which is good, and I
Yeah.
suppose networking is definitely a key. If you don't put yourself out there, you're invisible. No one will know you exist.
Mm.
Um, were there any particular good networking events? You mentioned even launchpads like NDRC and WARA. Were there any particular events or organizations that you found very beneficial um, when building the empire that's still building, that's Pop Team?
Yeah, well, I guess so. I think, like, when it comes to networking in general, it's good to have a good strategy for what events you want to go to. I wouldn't say you can over network, but you can spend a lot of time going to every event and
Yeah.
actually not get anything done. So I definitely think if you're going to start going to networking events and you want to meet people, it's always important to have a good strategy, right? So events like Dublin Web Summit are great, but so many people that go to the Dublin Web Summit and they don't really have a clear strategy. So I was the same. I went, the first year I went to Dublin Web Summit, I just kind of went and I expected to meet lots of people and I expected to see cool speakers and meet cool people. But then I didn't meet anyone. I didn't really have a clue what I was doing there. So I think, we always do a lot of preparation coming up to network events to say, okay, where are we at right now? What type of people do we want to meet? So right now we're trying to meet marketers, right? So we're trying to meet lots of marketing people to use the platform and kind of look at our new direction. So that's really important to us. So we might target marketers and specific marketing events. And if we were going to the Web Summit, we might break that up. So we might say, 50% of my time I want to be talking to marketers. So in the build-up, I'm going to reach out to these people and I'm going to organize meetings, try to organize as many meetings throughout the day as possible. So I think, be careful with networking and make sure that you have a clear objective for what you want to get out of it. And you're not wasting your time, but you're not wasting someone else's time as well, right? So it's kind of, works both ways. So I definitely think they're important, and the Web Summit is a really amazing event. And for anyone who's very early stage, there is ways of getting in, and I know it's expensive a lot of the time, but I don't think we paid for our first 2 years we were there, so there's ways you can do it, and there's not a lot of security at the Web Summit, so.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I never thought of that now, to be honest. But certainly you can volunteer. There's lots of options to get in. But I think you have some very, very good points there. Number one is research every networking event you go to. Know who's going to be in the room. Sure. Try and contact the people before you turn up at the event to try and ensure that you meet them face to face. And talking to the Web Summit, which is so vast, one thing I did now when I didn't manage to nick in like you did possibly, but Paddy
I didn't do that.
It didn't happen. It's just anyway. But I remember one year not making it to the Web Summit and literally spending all my time afterwards networking to people that had been to the Web Summit, saying I met you briefly at the Web Summit. After the event, and it was a great way of actually breaking the ice and actually starting a conversation with someone. So follow up with networking events is obviously going to be the key as well. But I like that the planning piece is really important. So you said the Web Summit. Any other particular groups, organizations, or places that you'd recommend?
I guess if you look at there's a Startup Digest, there's a weekly digest that you can. I've added it to my Google Calendar now, so I can always keep track of the different events going on. There's probably a startup every single thing you can think of at this stage. So, just again picking the right startup events and making sure they're going to fit in your industry. We're going to a lot of the marketing talks in the likes of Wire now. We're going to some more casual ones like the kind of the startup drink about that's on every Friday evening. That's a pretty good one to go to. And as I said, like the community is so small. When you go to these events, you just start seeing the same people over and over again. So that Startup Digest is definitely a good place to start to look for what events are coming up.
Where can you find that, Richie?
I guess I just Google startupdigest.com. I'll post it in. I'll post it in the group after.
Sweet. Yeah. So that's a real jam, and no one's ever invited me to those drinks on a Friday. Damn you people! But anyway,
Friday night, man, we'll hit it up.
Sounds good.